Hi guys, this is SDJRSNF88 speaking with the 6th update on the WW1 Trench Railway. And as can be seen, the layout's really started to come together now, so let's take a closer look at some of the progress that's been made over the past few weeks. So one of the first major changes to the layout since the previous update is the addition of a splash of colour to the baseboards and the raised polystyrene area in the form of this earth undercoat pigment. Now this pigment is available from Woodland Scenics, and as you can see it provides a really realistic muddy earth tone to your layout. And just splashing this colour all over the baseboards and all over the white polystyrene areas has really sort of started to bring the layout to life, and it's really started to sort of capture what I plan to achieve with the layout when it's complete. Now of course this is just an undercoat, and other things will be added on top. Of course I plan to add the mud effect that I'm currently working on. I'm just testing out a few different effects to see which one will suit the layout the best. And of course, as I mentioned, I plan to have quite a few little green areas on this layout, especially towards the bottom left by the sort of the workshops there. So that will also go on top. But for a base coat, it really does provide a really nice sort of colour to the layout, and it really does sort of bring it all together and sort of gives you a rough idea of what the layout will hopefully look like when it's complete. The wooded area is also starting to come along quite nicely now. As can be seen, there's a few new tree additions there, along with a bit of flock. And it really is starting to add to the depth of the area and give the effect that it's a nice sort of deep, lush wood that the railway is heading off into. I've added a few trees inside the field yard itself to disguise the sort of the controller and other bits and pieces that are actually in there, and it really does look nice. It really does sort of look like the train is entering an arch of trees. Another thing I've also done is I've sort of raised the tree line itself by adding more flock to the top of the trees. Raising them to meet the sort of wooded area that's actually on the back scene itself. So from this point of view, it really does give the effect that the forest sort of rolls off into the distance. Now another bit I've been working on in this area is the tree arch over the road. So without further ado, I'm going to pan the camera around and we're going to take a closer look at what I've been working on there. So as you can see, we now have a road that leads off into the distance. Now I'm very pleased with how this effect has sort of turned out, as in fact that involves a bit of my photography skills. I actually, whilst I was out taking my dog for a walk, I took him for a walk around the local lanes, and I came across a lane that looks sort of very similar to what I wanted the lane to look like on the layout. And sure enough, I sort of figured out the rough angle that the road was sort of leading off to the back scene on the layout, and took a couple of pictures from what I thought would be the correct angle. And sure enough, I took one picture, and as you can see, it perfectly lines up with the road surface that is leading off to the back scene, and really does give the effect that the road is sort of travelling into the wood and then off into the fields in the distance. And I cannot believe how well it's turned out. What I also found quite funny is the colour of the road in the picture is actually not that far off the current colour of the road that is on the layout. Of course, as I mentioned, I do plan to tone the road down a bit, but in seeing how well it blends off into the back scene, I'm not sure if I'm going to do much toning down towards the end of the tip of the road there, because it does give a really subtle effect of it sort of blending off into the back scene there. The only sort of giveaway at the moment is of course some of the flock that's fallen off the tree arch, which disguises the rest of the picture into the back scene there, sort of fallen down and sort of given the sort of reveals the cut-off point between sort of 3D and 2D there. But all in all, I'm extremely pleased with how it's come out. In fact, it's probably one of the best optical illusions I've managed to achieve on a layout to date. So yeah, let me know what you think. Moving round to the right, and we start to come into the destruction that surrounds the trenches, including the edge of the forest, which has been decimated by the conflict in the past. And as you can see, I've put some dead trees up here in the form of Woodland Scenics driftwood. which is absolutely superb. It's actually real branches off of real trees, but they've been dried and they've sort of really gained this sort of like burnt effect. It's almost as if they've been charred by a fire or something, which is perfect for this sort of scene on this railway. Now, as you can see, there's a couple of craters in amongst the trees to obviously show where enemy artillery has obviously hit the ground and obviously probably caused the destruction in this area. So it really does add to the effect, and of course I will go over this with the realistic mud effect, along with some sort of weathering powders and stuff to sort of give the effect of the small fire that's probably happened there in the past. So as we move round, you can see I've also finally got round to adding the barbed wire. I need to get round to weathering the wire itself. But I've just temporarily put it there, but all the posts are pinned into the landscape up there, so they're not going anywhere. And I've also worked on the trench walls, and the trench walls now extend all the way around the artillery battery. We'll take a closer look at that again in a moment. Now you can see there's a few more trees here, so probably the wood probably extended all the way around here before the war began. And as you can see, there's more dead trees, which are pretty synonymous with World War One. There's lots of pictures of these sort of burnt out sort of skeletons of trees, and I especially like that one that's directly in the centre of the shop now, because it almost looks like a cross or a sort of a person with his hands in the air, which is quite spooky in a way. But there were scenes like that during the war, and it's nice that it's been sort of, I've managed to capture it on the layout. And then coming around to the right, we have the entrance to the trench, which the railway runs off into. So we'll now take a closer look at what I've been doing in this area. So the trench has been occupying most of my time since the previous update, mainly because I had to build up the land to the right of the trench wall, as that wasn't there in the previous video, and also just building the trench walls themselves. As you can see, they're on a bit of a curve there, and they're all sort of sloped back. So I had to really sort of think about when I constructed those. Again, they are made from coffee stirrers, an old aluminium takeaway tray which I used to create corrugated iron strips. I'll pop another link to that tutorial on how I made those at the top of the screen now. And also as well, the wicker posts as well, which have been used for the timber supports for the wall. They've all had to sort of be filed down at the bottom to give them a leaning effect, to sort of give the effect that the trench walls are leaning back into the landscape itself. Now the landscape to the right is constructed out of polystyrene, much like the rest of the raised area. Again, I had to sort of shape it and give it sort of a nice sloping and sort of a rounded hill effect. I've also gone over with a bit of paper mache, especially in the sort of front area. You can see where some of those tree trunks are too. This is mainly because there were quite a few cracks, because I used quite a few different blocks of polystyrene to achieve the effect that I wanted to. But as I've mentioned, again, this will all be covered up with the mud effect that I'm testing at the moment. You can see I've also added a nice large crater there to the right, and I'm going to have a bit of fun maybe adding a bit of water or something in there at some point as well. So as you can see, the trench curves on round into the back scene, and we're going to just zoom in a bit and take a look at the structure that sort of camouflages the entrance to the fiddle yard above the trench there. So here's a closer look at the timber structure that crosses the trench. And in a way, it's almost a bit like a bridge. Now the reason for adding this, apart from disguising the entrance to the back scene there, is that real trenches, when I was just studying the real images of what I wanted the trench walls to look like, quite often featured these strange structures, and I still can't quite put my finger on what they were actually for. Some of them didn't actually look like that. Some of them actually didn't even touch the sides of the trench walls. They just simply stood from that post to that post, and they had like a little cross support there and there. Sadly, I can't put those cross supports on this particular one, purely because the trains would hit it when going underneath it. But maybe there was some sort of shelter, to cover up ammo crates or something to stop the damp from getting on them. Maybe they were sort of a bit of a shelter that some of the soldiers could hide under when under artillery fire. Or maybe they were just something as simple as crossing from one side of the trench to the other. I honestly do not know. So if you have any more information about what these strange structures were for, do let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I thought it'd be a nice little feature to add to the trench, and also as well, it's a great, as mentioned, it really works out perfect for disguising the sort of the gaping hole that leads into the fiddle yard. Another thing I've been working on as well, and it's still not quite complete. I'm not sure if you can see into the darkness of the fiddle yard itself. I've got a few things piled up behind there. But I've actually built the walls, much like what I've done with the forest at the other end, into the fiddle yard. So if you look through the underneath the sort of the arch there, you will still see the trench walls continuing around into the fiddle yard. So it gives the effect that the trench just continues off into the distance. So I guess that's all for the main sort of bits and pieces I've been really working on the layout. But there's a few new additions, a few little modifications, and we'll take a quick look at all those. So I've also been working on the 9.2 inch howitzer kit, and as you can see I've sanded it down and primed it, and it's now ready for painting and assembly. One thing I've also done is I've made a few little additions to it in the form of the little guide rail that goes around the back of it. This would obviously have connected to a little wheel that was underneath the sort of the platform there, and this would allow the gun to rotate to wherever it was sort of needed to be aimed to. So I thought that was quite a nice little addition. I can't wait to sort of sink that into the mudded area, so the mud sort of comes up around the rail and blends it all in to the sort of the location that it's set into. I've also started work on the finer details for the layout, including these little ammo crates. Now these are little resin crates that arrive in a bag of about 50, and you need to paint them. So those first two ones there that are grey, they are as they come from the bag, and then the ones that are piled up in the background are ones I'm actually painted. Now I've got a load more of these to do. That's only just a small amount of them, but you can see they really are tiny. If I just pop my finger in shot there, you can see they are extremely small, and it is quite fun to paint those. But as you can see, when they're piled up alongside the track, they really do look effective. I might get another bag of these. Of course, I plan to have a huge pile of these all stacked up around the edge of this sort of railhead here to sort of give the effect that they've been unloaded. But also they do make the perfect load for the trains themselves, so I do intend on getting another bag, which I will then sort of pile them up neatly and stack them onto the back of some of the flatbeds that I've got on the layout. So before I round off this video, I've got a bit of exciting news regarding the layout's first official public outing, which will take place in January of next year at the Weston-Super-Mare Model Railway Show. Now, as you can imagine, I'm extremely excited about displaying the layout for the first time, and I've got to say a massive, massive thank you to Keith, who is the organiser of the show, for managing to slot the layout in at such short notice. Now, Keith is a really, really remarkable man. He always puts on two amazing shows each year, one winter show and one summer show. As you know, I displayed Compton Key at the winter show last year, and I also filmed the summer show this year. I'll put a link in the on top of the screen now to that video, and it really is a remarkable show, and it never ceases to amaze me each time I visit. He has at least 30 layouts from all around the country, all different scales, regions, and even different continents. It really is an amazing and well organised show, so I highly recommend a visit. And the most amazing thing about this show is that all money raised from entry fees goes to charity, and so far Keith has raised over £40,000 for local charities, so it really is a good cause and really is well worth a visit. So I'm really looking forward to getting the Trench Railway ready for that show in January of next year. Now, of course, January is only just around the corner. It's only a couple of months away, and there's still a long way to go. But I'm pretty confident I get the layout ready for its first outing, and it would be great to see you guys there and to let me know what you think of the layout. And yeah, some really, really exciting stuff. And of course, I will confirm more dates for the layout as and when they are confirmed. And I'm really looking forward to exhibiting this layout at a number of shows next year, and of course in the future as well. So I guess that's all for this update. As always, I hope you enjoyed this update, and feel free to let me know what you think about the layout in the comments below. So I guess that's all that's left for me to do, is to say this has been SDJR Sunf88 speaking, and thanks for watching.